back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey man, this time we're gonna do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It is time for Keeping It Sports with M3, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everything's going well for you here on this Tuesday, the 17th day of the month of May. Yes, a day later than normal, but hey, better late than never. Excuse me. Damn cough, still got that. No, day late, but still same excitement, same, motivation. A lot on my mind today. Mixing some football, even some hockey, some baseball as we go on. But, of course, got to start with the NBA playoffs where, every series went deep in this past round. Hell, we even got 2 Game 7s on Sunday, although they both kind of turned into duds. But the bigger story, of course, was what happened in the nightcap. The bigger story is what happened between the Suns and the Mavericks, and now what happens after that. And yeah, we can sit here, give a lot of praise, a lot of adulation to Luka Doncic, because let's face it, you look at him coming into this series, if you're doing a draft between the Mavericks and the Suns, Luka is probably the first player that gets taken based on age and skill level. But after him, you're probably taking at least 4, maybe 5 guys off of the Phoenix Suns before you even look at, Jalen Brunson or Spencer Dinwiddie or Reggie Bullock or whoever you want to consider the 3rd or 4th best player on the Dallas Mavericks. Because this Phoenix Suns team was loaded. They had referred to this as the revenge season. After coming so close to winning an NBA championship last year, they had the best record in the NBA this year and were looked at as overwhelming favorites in this series and one of the favorites in the NBA to win the entire thing. But what happened? What the hell happened on Sunday night? Because we've seen ass kickings in the postseason before. Hell, we just saw one last week with the Warriors getting torched in Game 5 by the Memphis Grizzlies. The difference there is Golden State knew they had a backdrop there. They were up 3-1. They knew Game 6 was in their building and that the Grizzlies were going to be without Ja Morant for the remainder of that series. So they knew they had wiggle room. We've never seen a home team get annihilated in a Game 7 to this level, to the point where you have one player on the opposing team outscore that team by himself in the first half, as Luka would do. And the 2 stars, the 2 guys that are supposed to lead the way for the Phoenix Suns, Devin Booker and Chris Paul, were no-shows completely, especially in that first half, going combined 0 for 11. And then there's the mystery surrounding DeAndre Ayton, where he's supposed to be a member of your big 3. He's supposed to be one of your young building blocks and one of your stars moving forward on this team. Supposed to be the overwhelming advantage that you have over this Mavericks team, because they don't have that kind of size in the paint. They don't have that kind of big man that's going to just clog up the area like that and play tremendous defense at the same time. Why did he only play 17 minutes? It's one thing for him to be in foul trouble in the first half, but then over the remainder of the game, he plays only 17 minutes. And for Monty Williams to come out after the game and say, oh, it's internal, excuse me. What is that? And the Phoenix Suns, that was an all-around embarrassment in every shape and form. And yeah, Booker's going to take his criticism. Monty Williams, even though he was the coach of the year, going to get criticized heavily for the DeAndre Ayton situation. Hell, DeAndre Ayton, this could have been his last stand with the Phoenix Suns, considering he's set to be, while restricted, he's set to be a free agent this summer and wants a max contract. He wants to get paid like a big-time star. And the way he's handled himself, the way he has represented himself there so far, shows that he probably deserves that money. He probably deserves to get paid, that max contract that you're seeing so many of these young players get once they complete their rookie deal. Does that push him out the door? But of course, the biggest criticism of all of this, and this is something I said from the beginning of this series, had to happen if the Phoenix Suns did not win a championship. Because this was probably this guy's best chance and maybe last chance to get an NBA championship, and that's Chris Paul. Now, he played great in the first 8 games of this postseason, including in the closeout game of round 1 against the Pelicans, won a perfect 18 for 18 from the field. But after game 2 of this series, he disappeared. From the second he turned 37 years old, he fell off a cliff and was a non-factor for the Suns through the remaining 5 games of this series. And the thing that's, you have to respect Chris Paul's accomplishments in this league. Over 10-time All-Star, so many times, I think it's 9 All-NBA defensive player. And we've seen, in the last day, Patrick Beverley, one of his old foes, seemingly doing cartwheels across ESPN, ripping this guy left and right. And while, Beverley, it comes off as extremely personal, it comes off as, over the top, especially when you consider how he overreacted last year in the playoffs and shoved Chris Paul from behind. He's kind of right in what everything he was saying, in that Chris Paul does get this free pass that seemingly no other star in this sport gets. Chris Paul, whenever Paul George gets eliminated from the postseason and plays bad, we shred him. Carmelo Anthony, he's had a Hall of Fame career. He's likely not going to get a ring. He got excoriated for all those postseason failures with the Nuggets and the Knicks. James Harden, he has as well. I'll get to him in a second. So why does Chris Paul get that free pass? No, it's okay. The media needs to realize it's okay to rip Chris Paul. The world is not going to end tomorrow if you criticize Chris Paul. What? Just because he's got all those cute State Farm commercials, he is the head of the NBA Players Association, does a lot of charitable work, seems to have a great family, is a tenacious worker, and just been a pest defensively over his career. Maybe it's because he's if he was 6'5", maybe he'd get more criticism. If he was the size of LeBron James, maybe he'd get more, backlash when his team comes up small. But because he's listed at 6'1", although I believe he's more likely 5'11", he gets the free pass that most NBA superstars don't get. And it seems kind of ridiculous. But at the same time, while I'm sitting here ripping Chris Paul and ripping the Phoenix Suns for what is an embarrassing performance, got to give credit to the Dallas Mavericks. Got to give credit to Luka Doncic and Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd had a perfect game plan against the Phoenix Suns after, as this series went on. And that was attack Chris Paul. Don't let him come up the court easy, set up a play without a man on him. Force him to be, a stationary player. And Luka just continues to grow and amaze us before our eyes, because the one thing I worry about for Luka Doncic is him falling into what Dirk had to deal with for years. And that's, the Mavericks never found him that Robin. They never found him that 1A or B plus type player to pair up with him like David Robinson had at the end of his career with Tim Duncan, or Tim Duncan had with Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, or LeBron had to leave Cleveland to go get Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, or Garnett, Pierce, and Allen had to forge together. No, Dirk, outside of having Steve Nash early in his career, he didn't have another superstar player by his side through his career. That's, to me, has made his 2011 championship run even more impressive. And that should make this run that Luka is on here in this postseason, what to me is just the beginning of things to come, even more impressive. Now, as well as Dinwiddie and especially as well as Brunson have played in this postseason, now they're not star players. They're good NBA players. They're good starters in this league, although Dinwiddie comes off the bench mostly. He plays starter-like minutes. And you can't always account for guys like this having that kind of performance. So, and as we go deeper in the postseason, it only becomes tougher, especially now that you're going up against a team in the Golden State Warriors that has won 3 championships in the last 6 or 7 years, that has at least 2, maybe 3, depending on how Draymond Green is viewed at the end of his career, future Hall of Famers on the team, has a head coach that won championships as a player and was able to be the right guy at the right time in the right place to turn this group of players from a very good team into a dynasty. And while they were without Kerr the final 3 games against the Grizzlies, he's cleared protocol. He's going to be back ready to coach this team for game 1 starting tomorrow night in San Francisco. The question becomes for the Warriors, how do you guard Luka? Because for as much as at times Luka Doncic can be a liability defensively, at times he can have 1 or 2 plays during a game where you're looking at him saying, what the hell are you doing? The fact that a guy that, while he's not fat by any means, he's not built like an Adonis, he's not built like LeBron James or like Giannis Antetokounmpo, some of the things that he can do with how far out he can shoot, with how he can drive the paint and create these circus-like shots, how do you stop that? How do you guard that? He's going to wake up, roll out of bed, and put up 30. And as we've seen in this postseason, Brunson's gone off at times. Hell, Dinwiddie's coming off of a 30-point game in Game 7 against Phoenix, so he's probably feeling pretty good about himself. How do you stop that? Because let's face it, it was a struggle for this Warriors team against Memphis. It was, now the game 4 without Ja Morant. They didn't get a lead until a minute left, and that's mostly because the Grizzlies couldn't make a shot going down the stretch, and Steph finally made a three-pointer and just took 5 minutes to put in a bunch of foul shots. And then in game 6, you had Klay Thompson, step up and have his best game of the year, show some signs of vintage Klay. And to me, game 6 was more of a, the Grizzlies running out of gas emotionally. Even though Brooks and Bane played well, you got nothing out of the rest of that team. And with the Warriors at home, they were going to finally put their foot on their throats and put an end to this thing. But I'm going to be watching to see is it going to be a group assignment by the Warriors, always switching off someone taking the challenge of going up against Luka? Or is someone going to take it upon themselves? Is it going to be, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, Poole, Klay Thompson? Who's going to be that guy that at least attempts to slow him down? Because if you can somewhat calm him down, maybe that puts the pressure on these other guys. Maybe it puts more pressure on Spencer Dinwiddie, who I could tell you at times with the Brooklyn Nets, there was a lot of J.R. Smith with him, where he would hoist up these shots where you're saying, no, 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 and then all of a sudden it goes in and you're like, okay, don't do that again. Now, this series is going to be very fun. I'm not sure who expected the Dallas Mavericks to get this far, but it's an incredible run that they are on, especially with just knocking off a team that in many people's minds was the favorite to come out of the Western Conference and reach the NBA Finals. All right, going to take the first break here, but a lot I want to talk about. Of course, got to turn my attention to the Eastern Conference, which, how's it going, Philadelphia? Talk about that, preview the Eastern Conference Finals, mix in some hockey. What a wild weekend it was in the NHL. And, of course, the story that never seems to end, Tom Brady. So a lot to get to over the next about 40 minutes or so here. Please sit back, relax, hell, put your feet up on the table if there happens to be one in front of you, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting founder Dick Robinson.
The media business has changed a lot since we opened our doors in 1964. Now media content is everywhere. On air, online, on the go. More than ever, companies are looking for people to help drive this new media.
At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll get hands-on training on the latest software and equipment in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has placed thousands of grads in broadcast media careers.
It's all about versatility. You see, at a radio station, if you also know how to shoot, edit, and post videos, you become a pretty hot commodity. That's the training you get at Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting, with locations up and down the East Coast from Massachusetts to Miami. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com. Connecticut School of Broadcasting, the nation's oldest and largest group of broadcast media schools, redefining training in radio, TV, and new media. Get trained. Get connected. 1-800-TV-RADIO.
Hi, James Harden. How's it going today? I know it sounds like sour grapes by me, considering my team got knocked out in the first round. The Brooklyn Nets are going to be that only team that gets swept in this postseason. At least it looks like that on the surface right now. but I took a certain level of enjoyment, certain level of satisfaction with how the Philadelphia 76ers got eliminated from the postseason last week by the Miami Heat. First getting blown out in Game 5, and then with their failure at home, led by another great performance by Jimmy Butler, and that had to sting for the 76ers fan base, because let's face it, that's a guy that they should have kept. You look at, just based on the reaction at the end of the game between Joel Embiid and Jimmy Butler, those guys are like brothers still to this day. I don't think Jimmy was just speaking to hear the sound of his own voice when he said to Joel afterwards that I wish we were still teammates. They had drawn that kind of bond together. But instead, the Sixers chose to give 5 years at $180 million to Tobias Harris, and it has, stopped them from keeping around somebody that was an integral part of that team. Hell, it cost them 2 players on that team, probably Jimmy Butler and keeping J.J. Redick, who was one of the true leaders there in Philadelphia. And that's what's led them to this point. This year-and-a-half pursuit that concluded this past February when they got James Harden. And right now, can you look at that trade and say that either team has won it? Because while the Nets got contributions from Seth Curry and by Andre Drummond, the main pieces in that trade were Ben Simmons and James Harden. Ben Simmons has not stepped on the floor for the Brooklyn Nets, whether it be due to anxiety disorders, mental health problems, back issues. But at the same time, the Sixers thought they were getting their 1A for Joel Embiid, and instead he's been a role player. Outside of Game 4, he never led this team in shot attempts. Very rarely put up 20-plus points a game. Seemed like he wanted to just be a distributor rather than the awesome offensive force that we've seen from this guy over the last 10 years. And some of it is because of his body betraying him. But you got to first look at the fact that he betrayed his body by letting himself get out of shape when he forced his way out of Houston. That led to injuries with the Nets. That led to a second injury with the Nets. At least that's what he claims it was this past year. And he forced his way out there as well. Got to where he wanted to be all along because Daryl Morey was the same general manager that allowed him to do whatever the hell he wanted at all times. And now the 76ers, quite frankly, have a mess on their hands. Because while in the long run, I think Maxey could be a star for this team. He could be that number 2 guy behind Embiid. At 23 years old, you're not looking for him to take over that role. You're not looking for him to take that mantle yet. That's what you want James Harden to be. You want James Harden to be the guy that's going to be a Hall of Famer someday. But at the same time, how can you look yourselves in the mirror as a franchise and say, this is a guy that I want to give the Supermax to? This is a guy that we can look to at ownership and say, yeah, we're going to give him 5 years for $275 million. There's just no way. You would be paying him $60 million at one point in this contract when he's 37 years old. It's an outlandish deal to give a guy that does not keep himself in shape, has not played like a star since being there, and then in the most important game of your season, with your season on the line, you lose, you go home, and it being in your building, he's only able to get 2 shot attempts in the second half, and his excuse was, oh, the ball never made its way back to me? Dude, you're the point guard. What do you mean the ball didn't make its way back to you? I used to think that his most embarrassing performance was Game 6 against the Spurs about 5 years ago, in which they lost by 30 points at a time where Manu Ginobili and Kawhi Leonard were not available for that team. But no, this is much worse. This is, you almost feel like he didn't even try. It feels like the rumors and the speculation about him tanking it to get Doc Rivers fired just so they can get Mike D'Antoni there, the ultimate babysitter head coach, a guy who, just like Daryl Morey, let this guy get away with whatever he wanted in Houston so he can get D'Antoni his, 5th or 6th go-around as an NBA head coach and coaching the 76ers next year. And where does that really get you? At least, for all of his shortcomings in win-or-go-home games, at least Doc Rivers has a championship on his resume. At least he has finals appearances on his resume. What does Mike D'Antoni have? Does he even have a conference championship on his resume? Think of how many failures that he's had over the years with the Phoenix Suns and the Houston Rockets. Now, he should have one finals appearance, but the league kind of screwed them over with the Robert Horry, Steve Nash situation when they foolishly suspended Amari Stoudemire for taking one step off the bench. But the Sixers are looking at a mess right now. And while I can't completely spike the football, considering what the Brooklyn Nets have to deal with when it comes to both Kyrie and Ben Simmons, does bring a little bit of joy and a little bit of a smile to my face, knowing that karma is kind of coming back to get James Harden. Now, on the other side of the East, the Miami Heat got to sit back and chill on Sunday and watch the Celtics and the Bucks play Game 7 of their series. And, a lot of excuses have been made for the Milwaukee Bucks the last couple days, whether it be Chris Middleton not being available, Giannis not getting much help from his supporting cast. But this series showed that Drew Holiday is more of a number 3, if anything else. That Brook Lopez can be a liability as your center because more than clog up the paint, he just wants to step out behind the arc and shoot 3-pointers. And the others never really had those moments that you expect. I kept waiting for that game where just out of nowhere, Bobby Portis would sink 7 3-pointers and have the crowd in Milwaukee jacked up. And that never happened. Hell, they had plenty of opportunity to step on the Celtics' throat and take full control of this series because all throughout they had leads. 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. They had home court advantage sway back in their favor on multiple occasions and never took advantage of that. And the biggest problem for them is the Celtics had those guys step up and had those moments, whereas the Bucks never had that. I mean, who expected Al Horford to put up a 30-point game at this point in his career in the postseason when he's offensively, maybe the 4th more likely the fifth option on that team, including having a 16-point fourth quarter in game 4. Or, now that finally, after what was kind of a quiet first couple of games of this series, Jason Tatum woke up and realized that I may be only 24, but I'm a budding superstar in this league. And for the final 4 games of this series, played like a rock star. Of course, you can't expect what happened in Game 7. Game 7 just was one of the more unpredictable things I've ever seen. Not, the Celtics winning, because they have such a great history, such a great tradition in Game 7s. But who saw Grant Williams coming? Now, this isn't something we should expect every game, of course. But he had the kind of game for them that, as I said, I kept waiting for either Bobby Portis or a Pat Covington or even a Grayson Allen maybe to have for the Bucks. And those guys, for the most part, played tentative. Those guys played scared throughout this series, whereas Grant Williams, they just kept feeding him open three-pointers. And this is a guy that shot 40% from the field during the regular season, or at least 40% from behind three-point. And he just kept getting left open. As he said after the game, could have taken 25 three-point shots. And now the Bucks, as defending champions, are left wondering what could have been. I mean, could it have been a different series with Middleton? Of course. He's always been the guy that seemingly, as great as Giannis is, Middleton is more of the closer on that team. You see a lot of his best work take place in the fourth quarter of these games. But what also came back to strike the Bucks is not taking the end of the regular season seriously enough. Remember, 5 weeks ago, on the last Sunday of the regular season, they sat everybody. Their only concern was having Drew Holiday start and play 3 seconds into that game so he could get some kind of bonus, some kind of incentive in his contract. Whereas the Boston Celtics, they played everyone. They played their rear ends off, and that win pushed them to the 2 seed over Milwaukee, guaranteeing that if they played in this postseason, Game 7 would be up in Boston. Would it have been a different outcome if it was in Milwaukee? Maybe. But as we saw with Tatum in the last 2 games in Milwaukee, especially what could go down as a legendary performance in Game 6, that the Boston Celtics are not fazed by playing on the road. So, you look at this series starting tonight, with it being the Celtics' 35th appearance in the conference finals. And yeah, they have not won many championships in recent memory. They have 1 title in the last 35 years, whereas their rival Los Angeles Lakers have 8. You get there enough, eventually you're going to break through. And they have a depth to this team and a mindset to this team that on any given night, beyond just Tatum and Brown, somebody could step up and do something for this team, whether it's Al Horford, whether it's Grant Williams, Marcus Smart. We'll see if Robin Williams plays for them or Robert Williams, plays for them in this series. I know he tried to give it a go last series, but was unavailable the final couple games. Offensively, they should have the edge over this Miami Heat team, especially with Tyler Hero seemingly disappearing in this postseason. He goes from shooting 40% behind the arc during the regular season to now only 27% in the postseason. And I don't know if he's that much of a ability defensively, or he just pissed someone off. But where the hell is Duncan Robinson? How come he's only playing garbage minutes, especially after having a great game one against the Hawks? Hasn't been seen. You have to put out a police report to find this guy. So that now this, just like in the West, should be a very fun series. You're going to have nights where the Heat just offensively are not able to match the firepower of the Celtics, even with some of these guys like Strus, like Victor Oladipo stepping up and having unexpected performances for the Miami Heat. But in the end, there is a reason why the Boston Celtics are viewed as the favorites in this series. Because while Jimmy Butler may be the most experienced player throughout this, and it showed that he's a guy that raises his game from all-star level in the regular season to superstar level in the postseason, the Celtics have age on their side and they have depth on their side. And add to it their superstar after what was a quiet first two games against the Bucks. Jason Tatum has woken up and shown everyone. You want to talk about Butler, you want to talk about Luka, you want to talk about the young stars of the league, you got to put some of that respect behind my name as well. Going to take another break here, come back on the other side and turn my attention to hockey. Yeah, that's right. Haven't talked much of that during this postseason, but it's really starting to get fun. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting founder Dick Robinson.
You know, the media business has changed a lot since we opened our doors in 1964. Now media content is everywhere. On air, online, on the go. More than ever, companies are looking for people to help drive this new media.
At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll get hands-on training on the latest software and equipment in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has placed thousands of grads in broadcast media careers.
It's all about versatility. You see, at a radio station, if you also know how to shoot, edit, and post videos, you become a pretty hot commodity. That's the training you get at Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting with locations up and down the East Coast from Massachusetts to Miami. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com. Connecticut School of Broadcasting, the nation's oldest and largest group of broadcast media schools. Redefining training in radio, TV, and new media. Get trained. Get connected. 1-800-TV-RADIO.
Welcome back to Keeping It Sports with M3 on this Tuesday afternoon here in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Hope you all had a great Monday. Hope you all had a great weekend. Didn't do the podcast yesterday just because there was bizarre weather concerns in the area. We thought we were going to get something that borderline near a hurricane. And in fact, it turned into a total dud. But in the end, it's better to remain safe than sorry and not take that risk there, because it would have been at its worst, reportedly, when I was supposed to be driving home from here. But hey, I digress on that. And speaking of crazy, it was a crazy Sunday in the sports world, because here you have the 2 Game 7s in the NBA. Meanwhile, we see a statistical anomaly, something that, on the surface comes off as a bit surprising, but in reality, we probably shouldn't be too surprised by it, with the gift that keeps on giving in the worst team in Major League Baseball, the Cincinnati Reds, continuing to play like the outright embarrassing disaster that they look like. Losing to the Pittsburgh Pirates 1-0, despite their pitching staff throwing a no-hitter. Yeah, that's right. You had rookie Hunter Green, who, despite his record, has showed flashes of why he was a first-round pick several years back by the Cincinnati Reds. Pitching into the 8th inning without giving up a hit. And what was surprising, especially with him being a rookie, and he's over the 100 pitch count. And finally, they came out and took him out with 118 pitches after his 5th walk of the game. And I'm sure the front office of the Reds is pulling their hair out. The reliever, Art Warren, comes in and gets Ke'Bryan Hayes to ground out what they hope was a double play, but he beats it out to first base for a fielder's choice, allowing a run to score. And then the Pirates are held off the board in the top of the 9th inning to become the first team since 2008 to allow 0 hits and lose. In fact, this is the 6th time since 1900 that an occurrence like this has happened. Now, the problem here is it does not count in the record books as a no-hitter, because the rule is you have to have pitched, whether it's one pitcher by himself or the staff in general, you have to go 9 innings. So since they only got to pitch 8 innings, does not count. But it's just another cherry on top on what has been an embarrassing start to this season for the 2022 Cincinnati Reds, who we sit here at this very moment, and they are 9-26 on the season. Hell, they got off to a 2-13 start. Yeah, that's really going to inspire the fan base. Really, give them good things to think about with a start like that in the first 15 games of your season, and probably being about a week away from being 20 games under 500. Hell, by the end of this month, with the way they're playing, they could be 30 games under. And I can only imagine what Joey Votto is thinking looking at this crap. He had to be, even though he's not the Joey Votto he once was, he had to be outright furious when in spring training they traded Jesse Winkler and Eugenio Suarez to the Mariners, essentially as a sign that they were giving up on the season before it even started. As I said, they're an embarrassment to this sport. They are just an embarrassment to the essence of competition that you wouldn't even try to come into the season and see what happens. It's one thing if things blow up and you're 20 games under at the All-Star break or the trade deadline, and then you start to sell off pieces. But to do that before the start of the season was just downright embarrassing and shameful. And that was kind of lost in what was a great Sunday in sports, considering we had 4 Game 7s. Mentioned the 2 duds that were the NBA's Game 7s. But hockey, my God, the Stanley Cup playoffs, I know I haven't talked very much about it, have been awesome to watch so far. The fact that in the first round alone, we had 8 games go to overtime sets us up for what is just hopefully more chaos to come. And I got what I wanted out of Rangers Penguins, because for as much in the past, and I'll be the first to admit this, as much as I've rooted for the New Jersey Devils over my lifetime, I have a Marty Brodeur jersey. I've been to, quite a few Devils games over the years. Not just the Devils, but hockey in general as a sport, for as much as I pay attention to it, has always been the fourth child for me. And maybe I don't give it as much love, attention, appreciation as I should, because even for someone who does not have their team in it, there's a lot of enjoyment. There's a lot of fun to this, especially with watching Rangers versus Penguins, who, even more so than the Philadelphia Flyers, I can't stand both these teams, mostly because of their fan bases. You know, the Penguin fans are always whining and complaining anytime someone even breathes on the likes of Crosby, Malkin, Letang, any of their other countless stars on that team. And Ranger fans, led by former NFL quarterback Boomer Esiason, anytime even the slightest call goes against them, they think that there's this magical button in Gary Bettman's office that gets opened up. It says, "Screw the Rangers" on it, and he just presses that and cheats them out of it. I don't know how you could complain about "screw the Rangers" in this series, maybe with the goal that was taken off the board in game one. Maybe you could argue that. But you were, remember, down 3-1. You were getting beat up and abused by the Penguins. I mean, Shesterkin even got pulled from some of these games, especially after game 4, given up 5 goals in the second period. It was pitiful, some of these performances that the Rangers were putting up. And in game 5, and what was the turning point of this series in more than one way, not just preventing the Penguins from clinching on your home ice, but you have to stand up for yourself. You couldn't continue to just keep getting your ass handed to you night after night after night. We know they're not a great at winning face-offs. That was something that was kind of a disaster for them throughout this series, and is not going to get any easier going up against Carolina in the next round, where they're the 4th best in the league at winning face-offs. But you had to send a statement to the Penguins. And even though he's not considered a household name to most people that just commonly follow the Rangers, I'm sure Jacob Trouba has now a special place in Ranger fans' heart for the hit that he delivered on Sidney Crosby, knocking him out of Game 5, keeping him out of Game 6, because that turned this series around. That gave the Rangers not just a little bit of momentum, allowed them to send a message to the Penguins saying, hey, we're not going to get pushed around anymore here. But like I said, it knocked out one of the faces of the league, one of the faces of the opposition, from being involved in an important game number 6. Hell, knocked him out from being part of the remainder of that game and gave the Rangers confidence. And it's weird, it doesn't happen that often in sports, coming back from 3-1. But the mindset should always just be, just win tonight. When you're that underdog team, when you're the team that is with your backs to the wall, just win tonight. Because as you go on, the pressure starts to mount. The pressure starts to build up on the team that had the 3-1 lead. And especially being without Crosby. The Rangers showed a lot of grit, a lot of toughness in these last 3 games, trailing in every single one of them, including trailing 2-0 in both games 5 and 6. Even with them go down 3-2 heading into the third, you didn't really feel like they were out of it. You didn't feel like that they were truly done, especially, the Penguins are playing with a backup goaltender. You figured that just give us an opportunity, give us one shot is what Ranger fans should be saying to themselves, and they're going to capitalize here. You had Zibanejad tie up the game in the third, and 5 minutes into overtime, coming off of a power play, Panarin wins the game, wins the series for the Rangers, and you just saw MSG light up in a way it hasn't in a while. And I know there's Penguin fans out there that are crying, complaining, saying, oh, it's not fair. The series would have been different without Crosby getting hit like that. You got to shut the hell up. Because prior to a couple of years ago, when the Capitals won their first championship, and now they've kind of been treated as, somewhat of the golden child, even though I think you could say that the Lightning have probably taken that away with their back-to-back cups. The Penguins, there was a period of time you couldn't go near Crosby. You couldn't even poke him on the shoulder, whether it's him, Letang, Malkin, any of those guys, without getting a 3-game suspension. The league has very much heavily protected you guys over the last 15 years. I know it sucks because this run for the Penguins, in all likelihood, is over. Now, if you believe the reports, Malkin and Letang are unlikely to return to Pittsburgh next year. At least one of them is going to probably follow their former assistant general manager up to Montreal next year. But you got 3 championships out of this group. That's a lot more than other people can say about their teams. You're still going to have Crosby, who's a very good player. You have other guys that are stepping up and becoming stars for this team, like Jake Gunsel, who was probably the best player on the ice throughout this entire series. And amongst others that are going to be hopefully those guys for the years to come for Pittsburgh. So it's not like you're going to just disappear and fade into darkness. You're just not going to have likely 2, maybe 3 Hall of Famers on your team for the foreseeable future. Had a good run, but now you go back to what all of the rest of us have had to deal with over the years. And just when you thought it couldn't get any better, you had Flames Stars go to overtime in their 7th game on Sunday night, with late into the night, New Jersey's own Johnny Gaudreau drilling a game-winning goal in overtime. And it took a lot of effort for the Flames to win this game. Hell, it took a lot of effort for the Stars just to be in this, because on paper, the Flames probably should have won this game a couple of games ago. And if they had, mediocre goaltending, probably would have been done. But you can't say enough about the performance about Jake Ottinger, because the fact that the puck was in their side of the ice for most of the night, and he had to face 67 shots, something that is unheard of compared to his team only taking 28. I mean, that is stand on its head if it ever was. And you saw the respect, you saw the appreciation that the Flames had at the end of that game, at the end of the series. Each one of them to a man wanting to make sure they shook hands with Jake Ottinger to let him know, we respect what you've done. And being the fact that he's only 23, this should be a great springboard for him for years to come. Because, yeah, it sucks to lose a Game 7 in that fashion. You would almost rather get blown out than to give up the game-winning goal in overtime of a Game 7. But it was a great player that finally got the edge over you. And he had been stuffing Gaudreau all night long. Gaudreau had 6 or 7 opportunities at him throughout this game. And finally, he was able to, get to the side of Ottinger and shoot one over his right shoulder. It happens, unfortunately. But it shouldn't take away from the performance of Jake Ottinger. But this win by Calgary sets up what is going to be a lot of fun coming into this second round. I mean, on the East, you've got a battle for Florida beginning tonight with the Panthers and the Lightning. The Lightning continuing their quest for a three-peat, something that has been unheard of for 4 decades now. Meanwhile, the Panthers were able to upend the Capitals in the first round. Tomorrow, you get the beginning of the Hurricanes versus the Rangers. The Hurricanes had a lot more trouble with the Bruins than most people expected in the first round, especially they were up 2-0 in that series. And the Bruins had to battle their ass off just to make it a series in the end. Meanwhile, on the West, you've got the Colorado Avalanche going up against the St. Louis Blues. The Avalanche, who have been sitting back and chilling for a while now because they're the only team that won their series in less than 5 games in the first round. Everyone else was playing 6 or 7 games. Meanwhile, they were able to sweep the Predators and have been able to kick their feet up. And, finally, what has got to be maybe the most anticipated series, or definitely the most personal series, the battle for Alberta, when you've got the Flames going up against the Edmonton Oilers. You're going to get at least one Canadian team, and you're going to get one of Canada's teams advancing to the conference finals. And it just so happens both of those teams play in the same province. So that's going to be a lot of fun. The trash talking, that probably is going on between those two fan bases, those two cities right now. And should be a lot of fun in this second round, especially with what we saw in the first round. If that's a sign of things to come, it's another example of why nothing can match up to the intensity, the effort, and the fun of playoff hockey. And the effort and intensity these guys had to go through these last 2 weeks, and now they've got to become champions, got to do it at least 3 more times. Oh, it's going to be so much fun to watch. Going to take one more break here, come back, close things up for this week in Keeping It Sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting founder Dick Robinson.
You know, the media business has changed a lot since we opened our doors in 1964. Now media content is everywhere. On air, online, on the go. More than ever, companies are looking for people to help drive this new media.
At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll get hands-on training on the latest software and equipment in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has placed thousands of grads in broadcast media careers.
It's all about versatility. You see, at a radio station, if you also know how to shoot, edit, and post videos, you become a pretty hot commodity. That's the training you get at Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting, with locations up and down the East Coast from Massachusetts to Miami. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com. Connecticut School of Broadcasting, the nation's oldest and largest group of broadcast media schools, redefining training in radio, TV, and new media. Get trained. Get connected. 1-800-TV-RADIO.
Only a few minutes left here, but let's finish things out for this week and Keeping It Sports with M3. And some people just can't help but make things about themselves. Some people always have to make themselves a story. Some people always just have to be, quote unquote, that guy. And you don't understand it. And in this area, over the last several years, we've had a lot of people that are that guy. I think if you're doing a who's been a jackass rankings, or listening from all of the major sports teams, there isn't exactly that guy that's, a villain for any of the local hockey teams outside of John Tavares when he left the Islanders. But you look at it, with the Jets, it was Jamal Adams. And for a year before that, it was Jamal Adams, even with all the trade talk and whatnot. For the Giants, it was probably Odell Beckham, although you could say that Joe manager Dave Gettleman tried very hard to beat him out in that competition. For the New York Knicks, it became Julius Randle, probably the most surprising person on this list, considering he was so likable last year, having a breakout season, being second team all NBA, and then the obnoxious baby he became this year, to the point where even with him getting the contract extension, Knick fans already being done with this guy. That's how unlikable and underperforming he was this season. For the Nets, of course, it was Kyrie. That goes without saying. For the Yankees, I would say it was either Luke Voit or Gary Sanchez. Luke Voit, because he started complaining about his playing time, and then Gary Sanchez was just a whiny baby who every Yankee fan wanted gone, and was complaining about the lack of support he was getting when he was struggling, and gee, I wonder why that was the case. But of all of the athletes in this town, I think you can make a strong argument that no one more so has been that guy than Noah Syndergaard, who last week had to try to make a story about himself once again when his teammate Reed Dittmers threw a no-hitter against the Tampa Rays. And listen, there was things beyond that no-hitter that kind of annoyed me with this game, especially with Anthony Rendon, who's always been a right-handed hitter, having the gall to turn around and hit from the left side of the plate for the first time in his life and hit a bomb off of backup infielder Brett Phillips, who was in pitching in mop-up time. But here's Reed Dinsmer, who had a career 6 ERA heading into this game. Highest ERA for any pitcher with at least 40 innings thrown prior to their no-hitter. Has this unbelievable feat. Didn't do it by striking a lot of guys out. Got a lot of weak contact. And Syndergaard decides to just be that guy once again. When after the game, he posts on his Instagram story, "This is what a real," and he quoted the word real, "no-hitter looks like." And you know what that's a shot at, because a couple of weeks ago, the Mets had that no-hitter in which it took 5 pitchers to complete it. Of course, the New York media would have a field day with it, and the responses on that and social media would come back to Noah Syndergaard, and being that he has to be man of the people, man of social media, and can't just ever leave something alone, had to have the nerve to respond to it when he said on Twitter Wednesday, quote, "Hate to break it to you, but this song ain't about you. This is about Reed, a great teammate throwing a one-pitcher no-hitter, which is a rarity by today's game standards. Mets have a good team. Enjoy that instead of stirring up shit, as do the Angels. So drop the drama and move on." Hey, dude, the drama was only created because you decided to post something on Instagram about a, quote, real no-hitter. All right? And hell, you would even in your statement where you try to backtrack from it and say, oh, it isn't about creating drama, you still create drama by saying throwing a one-pitcher no-hitter. Why'd you have to go there? Instead, you could have just said, oh, no, hell, you didn't have to post anything at all, let's be honest. But you should have posted congratulations to Reed Ditzmer rather than saying, oh, this is what a real no-hitter looks like, and bringing up that it was a one-pitcher no-hitter, and as well as bringing up the rarity by today's game standards, everyone knew what you were talking about, even before you brought up the name of the Mets. He's still, butthurt over the fact that the Mets didn't bring him back. The Mets never even made him an offer. And that's because the new regime was smart enough to realize that this guy is a pain in the ass who's not worth $20 million. This guy, while they did offer him the qualifying offer, we're probably very thankful he did not take it. Because you look at the Mets, there's been a very good vibe with this team this year. There haven't been those guys in that locker room that have tried to act like they run the locker room this year. Whether it be him, whether it be Marcus Stroman. I can't completely confirm this to be true, but it looks like Buck got Brandon Nimmo to stop with the whole running full speed to first base on a walk nonsense. You're not hearing any arguments between Francisco Lindor and Jeff McNeil over whether it's a rat or a raccoon racing through the hallways of the Mets dugout. And trust me, with the way Lindor is playing right now, something like that should be the last thing on his mind. And this guy who talks so much crap on social media and wants to make himself look like a good guy or be that guy, karma came back and bit him in the rear end last night. He was off to a pretty good start in his season, had an ERA of 2.45, and because of his shellacking against the Rangers last night, getting knocked out in the first inning after giving up 6 runs, all of which earned, that ERA rose, all the way up to 3.60, and he's got a whip of 1.23. And if Syndergaard would just stop concentrating on BS and just concentrate on the field things, then he could live up to the talent he's always been. But it's nonsense like this that has always held him back and prevented him from being that future ace, that top of the rotation pitcher that everyone's always thought he could be. Because surrounding the injuries the last couple of years, when he's been on the mound, he's pitched more like a average at best number 3 starter. And speaking of people that just need to calm the hell down, what the hell was up with Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson last week, even suggesting the idea that the city of Dallas should have a second football team? He brought it up on Twitter based on a tweet that was posted by the NFL on CBS, asking if the NFL announced a new expansion team, what city do you think deserved it most? And he said Dallas, because they're about to pass Chicago for the third largest metro in the U.S. behind New York and L.A., and saying if they can sustain 2 NFL teams, then Dallas can as well. Even going as far as saying we would be able to sustain 2 NFL teams better than LA and New York. Yeah, okay, that's cute. You haven't seen the city of Chicago come out screaming and crying, saying, oh, we should get a second NFL franchise just because they have 2 baseball franchises there. And why is that? Because in Chicago, it's awake, breathe, eat, Bears. That's it. As much as they love the Cubs, the White Sox appreciate and adore the Michael Jordan Bulls era, the Chicago Bears will always be the number 1 of that city. And even though you're about to pass them as the number 3 metro in the U.S., that doesn't mean you should be getting a second football team. Hell, Jerry Jones would never allow it, even if it meant him making more money based on a new prospective owner having to pay rights fees to him to come into the area, or say they had to share the stadium like the Jets and the Giants do, and that means more money coming into his ashtrays, he would never, ever consider that because it could potentially hinder his fan base. Even as delusional and disgusting and nauseating as the Dallas Cowboy fan base is, those fans love themselves some Cowboys. That is their team. That is their number one. Not everybody has to have two NFL teams. You don't see, as I say, you don't see Chicago crying out for one. You don't see anywhere else in California crying out for one. You don't see, Green Bay crying out for a second team because the Packers are religion up there. You don't see the city of Detroit, even for as embarrassing and dismal as the Lions have been over the years, being so bad that they don't even get a prime time game on this year's schedule. And not even joking around, they're the only team that is not playing on prime time. Their Thursday obligation is filled by that afternoon game on Thanksgiving against the Bills. You don't see anybody else crying out for a second team. So why in the world should you be that one getting the second team? Makes no sense. And talk about making no sense. I'm going to close out with this today. And, I've been waiting for a week to talk about this. Tom Brady. Bravo. Just when I think that maybe we're going to get a week without Tom being in the headlines. Maybe we're going to get Tom just going to sit back and chill. He finally came back out of retirement, a retirement that we knew wasn't going to last. And it just so happened it was after day 40 that he decided to put the axe on this thing. And let's face it, he'd never filed retirement papers. He never was really planning on walking away. He just wanted to be out in front of a story before Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport were. But now Tom Brady has a new business venture that he's going to be dealing with. And it's as soon as his playing career is over, he's going to join Fox Sports as the lead analyst, replacing Troy Aikman, who left and went to ESPN. He's going to join by side with Kevin Burkhardt, as part of their new A team as an announcer. Oh, and get this, here's where it gets even better. You know what Fox is paying him? A 10-year contract worth $375 million. First off, bravo for Tom. Pulling off a deal like that. That's in that contract, he will make more than he has as a football player. Because he's only made about $302 million as an NFL player, and that's thanks to the discounts that he kept giving the Patriots all those years. But $375 million, that's double per year than what Tony Romo is making from CBS. That's more than what probably Troy Aikman is now making with ESPN to do Monday Night Football. I mean, Fox has got to be out of their damn mind. Because as great a player as Tom Brady is, let's face it, he doesn't have much of a personality. I mean, he's a likable guy in these interviews. Even no, people hate him because he's such a good-looking guy and he's the greatest quarterback of all time. But in general, he comes off as a very likable person. Good family man, good husband, good father. But just because he's a great football player, who's to say he's going to be a great announcer? I mean, look at all the countless other failures that there have been in the announce booth. Tiki Barber, O.J. Simpson, Joe Theismann. Remember that failed experiment on Thursday Night Football or Monday Night Football years back when him and Tony Kornheiser were part of ESPN's booth. And then, of course, the previous GOAT, Joe Montana. Hell, you even look at it. We have an example in front of us right now. NBC's not bringing back Drew Brees. They're moving on from him after just 1 year. And who knows? Was it a mutual decision? Was it NBC by themselves moving on? Does Drew have some kind of delusional idea that he's going to come back and play football? I mean, please, Drew, spare us on that. You were a disaster at the end with the Saints. But what? Fox is doing this just for attention's sake. And I can never, for the life of me, think of a time where I have watched a football game and said, oh, I'm more interested in this game based on the announcers who, I love Troy Aikman and Joe Buck. Big fan of Phil Simms. Ian Eagle, I think, does a great job on CBS calling games. But I'm not swayed based on an announced team or who his analyst is. I watch football because I love football. Hell, you see it. We even tune in and show up to watch Jets Jaguars. That's going to be a Thursday night game this year. We watch, even the bottom-feeding worst teams in the league play on Thursday night, Monday night, Sunday night, Sunday at 1 p.m., Sunday at 4:25, because we love the game of football. And we don't give a... You could pull me and 3 people that are just walking the hallways of CSB right now and have us do, the A group or the A block for football on Fox. And I'm sure the broadcast would be fine. I don't know if we'd be that great or provide that much of football insight. But the people wouldn't give a damn. They'd put the game on mute and just continue watching football. So, Fox has got to be out of their goddamn mind. I mean, you give Brady a lot of credit for pulling nonsense like this off, but please, $375 million for an unproven announcer? This has disaster and waste of money written all over it. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. I'll be back next Monday, normal time, normal place. Until then, everyone have a great week. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Have fun in whatever you may be doing. And I'll talk to you next Monday. Peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody.
I have had enough of you.
Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will ya?
I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.